Mom, I'm back! He saved me! These tearful words mark the climactic moment when Princess Zara rushes down the shuttle ramp into Queen Araline's arms after Captain Reeves' daring rescue. Their emotional reunion in the royal hangar, witnessed by stunned onlookers, shatters diplomatic tensions as mother and daughter collapse into each other's embrace, forever changing relations between their worlds. The twin suns had not yet risen over Valeris, but the royal palace was already alive with activity. Not the joyful bustle that had once defined the crystalline halls, but the somber movements of a court in mourning. Queen Araline stood at her chamber window, silver hair unbound and flowing down her back like a river of starlight. Her violet eyes, rimmed with exhaustion, gazed out at the darkened capital city, where prayers floated upward in the pre-dawn gloom. 3 months. 3 months since Princess Zara had vanished during a diplomatic mission to the outer reaches. 3 months of shuttered markets, of public vigils, of portraits hung in every home and building across Valeris. 3 months of a mother's heart breaking anew with each passing day. Your Majesty! The voice of High Counselor Thala was soft but insistent behind her. The Terran envoy has arrived. Araline closed her eyes briefly, composing herself. Relations with the humans had been strained even before Zara's disappearance. The border skirmishes near the Cressian Nebula had tested the decades-old peace treaty. Now, with suspicion and grief clouding judgment on both sides, every interaction felt like walking on crystal shards. "Send them in," she said, turning from the window. Her royal garments, once vibrant with the colors of Sarali nobility, had been replaced with the silver of mourning. Only the crown, set with luminous stones that caught and refracted every hint of light, marked her as sovereign. The doors parted to admit Captain John Reeve of the Terran peacekeeping frigate. Aurora. He was tall, even for a human, with shoulders squared by years of military discipline. Yet, there was something in his eyes, a thoughtfulness, perhaps even a sadness, that set him apart from the other Terran officers Araline had encountered. "Your Majesty." He bowed with perfect correctness, neither too deep to suggest mockery, nor too shallow to imply disrespect. "On behalf of the Terran Alliance, I extend our continued sympathies for Princess Zara's absence. We stand ready to assist in any way possible." Araline studied him. Diplomatic platitudes, certainly, but there seemed genuine concern beneath his measured tone. She gestured for him to rise. "Captain Reeve, your offer is noted, though I wonder what assistance you believe you can provide that our own legions cannot." Reeve hesitated. "Sometimes, Your Majesty, an outside perspective brings new insights, and—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes, neutrality allows movement where political forces might otherwise create obstacles." A veiled reference to the factions within her own court, Araline realized, not incorrect. The Warhawks saw Zara's disappearance as an opportunity to finally break with the peace treaty. The isolationists argued for withdrawal from all extraplanetary engagements. And somewhere in the cacophony, a mother's desperate hope for her daughter's return was being drowned out by political machinations. "Walk with me, Captain," she said suddenly, surprising both Reeve and her advisors. She led him from the audience chamber into the palace gardens, where crystal formations caught the first hints of dawn and transformed them into prisms of color. Away from listening ears, she spoke more plainly. "You have daughters, Captain Reeve?" A flicker of something, pain, perhaps, crossed his face. "A daughter. Once." The Queen didn't press. The weight in those 3 words told enough. Instead, she stopped beside a fountain where the water seemed to flow upward rather than down, defying gravity in the reduced field near the palace core. "Zara loved this fountain," Araline said softly. "She would spend hours studying the physics of it, trying to explain the phenomenon to her tutors." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. She always preferred science to statecraft, though she excelled at both. She turned to face Reeve directly. Whatever tensions exist between our peoples, Captain, I want you to know that my daughter has always been an advocate for deeper understanding between Sarali and Terran. Her last official act before her disappearance was to propose an exchange program for young scholars from both worlds. Reeve nodded slowly. I know, Your Majesty. I reviewed her proposals before accepting this posting. They were impressive, visionary even. Something in his tone made Aeroline look at him more closely. This was not mere diplomacy. This human officer had actually read her daughter's work, considered it worthy of note. Before she could respond, a royal guard approached at a controlled but urgent pace. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. High Command requests your immediate presence. The audience was over. As Aeroline departed, she noticed Reeve's gaze lingering on the portrait of Zara that hung in the garden alcove. The princess captured in a moment of scholarly concentration. Her silver-gold hair pulled back, her violet eyes alight with the thrill of discovery. In that moment, Aeroline saw not a Terran officer fulfilling a diplomatic obligation, but a man who recognized the value of what had been lost. Aboard the Aurora, Captain John Reeve stood in the ship's observation deck, staring out at the glittering spires of Valeris. The Sarali homeworld was beautiful, painfully so, with its crystalline structures and atmospheric conditions that bent light into perpetual auroras across the northern hemisphere. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Leon appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. As the ship's chief engineer, Leon dealt in certainties, in problems that could be solved with the right application of knowledge and skill. The political morass they'd entered by accepting this peacekeeping assignment clearly frustrated her. You have the analysis? Reeve asked, not turning from the viewport. Yes, sir. Leon crossed to stand beside him, datapad in hand. The communications team detected an anomalous signal penetrating our sensor net approximately 2 hours ago. It was weak, heavily encrypted, and... She hesitated. And it was using a variation of the Sarali royal encryption protocols. We were only able to partially decrypt it before the signal degraded. But what we got was... She handed him the pad. The message was fragmentary. Mother, alive, please come. And then a signature code that matched the personal identifier of Princess Zara. Reeve felt his pulse quicken. Origin? Tarsus, Leon said grimly. Tarsus, the outlaw moon, a former mining colony now overrun by smugglers, pirates, and rebel factions from a dozen worlds. If the princess was there, if she was still alive, then this was no longer a disappearance. It was a kidnapping. Possibly worse. Have you shared this with anyone else? Leon shook her head. Only Kai, Noru, and Tariq know. They were on duty when the signal came through. I ordered a communications blackout pending your review. Reeve nodded, grateful for her discretion. Good. Keep it that way for now. He turned the implications over in his mind. If he took this information to Queen Aeroline, she would immediately deploy the Sarali fleet to Tarsus, a show of force that would almost certainly result in the princess's death, if she wasn't already dead. If he informed his own superiors, bureaucracy would delay any response until it was too late. And if he did nothing, he thought of his own daughter, Emma, of the years of searching, hoping against hope, of the empty bedroom he still couldn't bring himself to repurpose, even 5 years later. Assemble Kai, Noru, and Tariq in my quarters, he said finally, and prepare the tactical simulator. We need to run some scenarios. Leon's eyes widened slightly as she realized what he was considering. Sir, if you're thinking what I think you're thinking, that would be a direct violation of... I'm aware of the regulations. Commander. Reeve cut her off, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm also aware that there's a young woman out there who needs help, and we might be her only chance." After a moment, Leon nodded. "I'll gather the team." As she left, Reeve turned back to the viewport. Beyond Valeris's jeweled atmosphere, the stars stretched into infinity. Somewhere out there, a princess was sending a desperate plea for help. And somewhere else, perhaps, another father was contemplating the same impossible choices he had faced. This time, he would not fail. Queen Aeroline sat rigid on her throne, her expression carefully composed as her military advisors argued around the circular war table. The holographic display at its center showed the moon Tarsus rotating slowly, its scarred surface marked with known rebel strongholds. "We must strike immediately and with overwhelming force," General Vex insisted, his scaled hands gesturing sharply at the display. "If the princess is indeed being held there, any delay increases the risk to her life. And any hasty action guarantees her death," countered Admiral Cora, her luminous eyes narrowing. "Tarsus is a warren of tunnels and bunkers. A military assault would drive her captors underground, with her as their shield." "The diplomatic approach," began another advisor. "Has failed for 3 months," Vex cut in. "While we sent envoys and negotiators, our princess has been suffering in captivity." Aeroline raised a hand, and immediate silence fell. "What of the Terrans?" she asked. "Have they been informed of the transmission?" High Commander Soren shook his head. "No, Your Majesty. As per your instructions, we've kept this intelligence within the inner circle." Aeroline considered this. The Terrans had advanced scanning technology that might help pinpoint Zara's location on Tarsus. Captain Reeve had seemed genuinely willing to help. And yet, to accept Terran assistance now would be to admit our own inadequacy, General Vex said, as if reading her thoughts. "The political ramifications. Do not speak to me of political ramifications when my daughter's life hangs in the balance," Aeroline said, her voice soft but edged with steel. She rose from her throne, approaching the holographic display. "What matters more, our pride or her life?" No one answered. They didn't need to. The factional divisions within her court had paralyzed decision-making for weeks. Some counseled patience, others aggression. Some whispered that the princess was already dead, that the transmission was a trap. Others believed that Zara lived, but that seeking Terran help would forever undermine Sarali's sovereignty. And through it all, Aeroline felt the crushing weight of dual responsibilities, as a monarch sworn to protect her people's interests, and as a mother desperate to save her child. "Prepare a diplomatic communiqué to Captain Reeve," she said finally. "Request a private audience to discuss sensitive intelligence." She turned to face her advisors. "We will hear what the Terrans have to offer, then make our decision." As the council dispersed, Aeroline remained before the holographic moon, its slow rotation hypnotic. "Hold on, my little one," she whispered. "Hold on just a little longer." On the Aurora, 4 officers sat in Captain Reeve's quarters, their faces illuminated by the glow of tactical displays. The mood was tense, each of them aware of the line they were contemplating crossing. "The way I see it," said Lieutenant Kai, the ship's best pilot, her fingers dancing across the simulator controls. "We have a 4-hour window while the Aurora is scheduled for routine maintenance in orbit. We take a shuttle, programmed with false registry codes, make the jump to Tarsus, execute the extraction, and return before anyone realizes we're gone. Except for the small matter of infiltrating a rebel-controlled moon, locating a single prisoner in a labyrinth of tunnels, and extracting her past armed guards," said Lieutenant Commander Leon dryly. "Minor details." Lieutenant Tariq, the team's linguist and communications specialist, studied the fragmentary transmission. The signal originated from the southern hemisphere, near the old mining quadrant. That narrows our search area somewhat. "And the medical considerations?" Reeve asked, turning to the fourth member of their impromptu rescue committee. Lieutenant Commander Noru, the ship's chief medical officer, frowned at his tablet. Assuming the princess has been in captivity for 3 months, we should prepare for malnutrition, dehydration, possible physical trauma, and psychological distress. Sarali physiology is similar enough to Terran that my standard field kit should suffice for stabilization. But we'd need to return her to proper medical facilities within 12 hours of extraction. Reeve nodded, taking in their assessments. What they were planning was not just a violation of protocol. It was potentially an act that could reignite tensions between their worlds if it went wrong. 4 officers in a shuttle against an entire moon of outlaws, with no backup and no official sanction. I want to be clear, he said, meeting each of their gazes in turn. This mission is entirely voluntary and entirely off the books. If we're caught, the Aurora and Earth Command will disavow any knowledge of our actions. We could face court-martial, imprisonment, or worse. He paused. I won't order any of you to take this risk. This is my decision, and I'll go alone if necessary. There was a moment of silence. Then Kai spoke, her voice uncharacteristically solemn. With all due respect, Captain, you'd be dead in 5 minutes without me at the controls. And she'd crash the shuttle in 4 without my system's expertise, added Leon, with a small smile. Tarek nodded. You'll need someone who can speak the local dialects and decode any further transmissions. And someone to patch you all up when things inevitably go sideways, Noru concluded. Reeve looked at his team. Not just officers under his command, but friends who had served alongside him for years, who had supported him through the darkest period of his life, who knew, without him having to say it, why this mission mattered so much. Thank you, he said simply. So, Kai clapped her hands together, breaking the somber moment. When do we leave? Before Reeve could answer, his communication panel chimed. Captain Reeve, came the voice of the bridge officer. Incoming transmission from the Royal Palace. Queen Aeroline requests your presence for a private audience immediately. The 4 officers exchanged glances. Acknowledged, Reeve replied. Inform the palace I'll beam down shortly. As the connection closed, he turned back to his team. Prepare the shuttle. If I'm not back in 3 hours, proceed without me. Sir, Leon frowned. What are you going to tell the Queen? Reeve considered this as he straightened his uniform. As little as possible, he decided. And, hopefully, learn as much as I can. The private audience chamber in the east wing of the palace was smaller than the formal throne room, designed for conversations requiring discretion rather than ceremony. Queen Aeroline dismissed her attendants as Captain Reeve entered, leaving only High Commander Soren at her side. Captain, she greeted him, gesturing to a seat across from her. The formality of their earlier meeting had been replaced by a tense urgency. Thank you for coming so quickly. Your Majesty, Reeve inclined his head respectfully as he sat. How may I be of service? Aeroline exchanged a glance with Soren, who nodded almost imperceptibly. She turned back to Reeve. We have received what appears to be a communication from Princess Zara, a distress signal, originating from Tarsus. Reeve kept his expression carefully neutral, though his mind raced. They knew. The question was, how much did they know? Had they detected the transmission independently, or had they somehow learned that the Aurora had intercepted it first? Tarsus, he repeated, as if considering this information for the first time. The outlaw moon. A dangerous place, especially for someone of the princess's status. Indeed. Aeroline's gaze was penetrating. Which is why I find myself in need of your perspective. Captain, my advisors are divided on how to proceed. Some advocate for immediate military action, others for caution. Before I make my decision, I would hear your assessment. It was a test. Reeve realized, not just of his tactical judgment, but of his honesty. How he responded now would determine whether the Queen viewed him as an ally or a potential threat. "May I speak frankly, Your Majesty?" "I would expect nothing less." Reeve leaned forward slightly. A full-scale military assault on Tarsus would be catastrophic, both for the princess and for regional stability. The rebels would use her as a shield, or worse, eliminate her at the first sign of Sirali forces. He paused. A small, covert extraction team would have a much higher chance of success. 4 to 6 operators, moving quietly, with the right intelligence and equipment. "Such as Terran operators?" Soren asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Such as whoever can get the job done with minimal risk to the princess," Reeve countered. "This isn't about flags or uniforms, Commander. It's about bringing a young woman home alive." Something shifted in Aralene's expression, a softening, perhaps even a flicker of hope. "And if I were to request such a team from the Terran Alliance, through official channels?" Reeve chose his next words carefully. "Official channels have official timelines. Your Majesty, requests, authorizations, mission parameters, risk assessments. By the time all parties signed off, weeks could pass." He met her gaze directly. "Does Princess Zara have weeks?" The Queen's hands tightened almost imperceptibly in her lap. "No," she said softly. "I do not believe she does." Silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken understanding. Then Areline rose, moving to a crystal console near the window. With a gesture, she activated a secure channel. "This conversation is now completely private," she said, turning back to Reeve. "No recordings, no observers. Not even the palace security systems are monitoring us." She returned to her seat, leaning forward. "Now, Captain, tell me what you are really planning." Reeve hesitated, measuring the risk. Then he made his decision. "My team intercepted Princess Zara's transmission approximately 4 hours ago. We've been developing an extraction plan, an unofficial one, without authorization from your superiors," Soren noted, though there was no accusation in his tone. "Yes." "Why?" Areline asked simply. Reeve thought of Emma again. Her laugh, her curious mind, the way she would curl up with a book bigger than she was. He thought of the years of searching, of hope slowly giving way to despair, of the empty bedroom he still couldn't enter without feeling his heart shatter anew. "Because every moment we delay reduces the princess's chances," he said finally. "And because sometimes duty demands we act rather than deliberate." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she reached into a hidden pocket of her robes and withdrew a small crystal, no larger than her thumbnail. She placed it on the table between them. "This contains the complete decryption key for Zara's personal communication signature," she said. "It will allow you to verify any further transmissions and potentially establish two-way contact." Her violet eyes held his. "I cannot officially sanction your mission, Captain, nor can I provide military support that might alert the rebels to your approach." "I understand, Your Majesty. But," she continued, "I can ensure that the Aurora's maintenance cycle is extended by 24 hours, giving you a longer operational window. And I can provide you with this." She nodded to Soren, who produced a small device and set it beside the crystal. "A Sirali phase shifter. It will help mask your shuttle's energy signature from Tarsus's perimeter sensors." Reeve picked up the devices carefully. "Thank you." Areline rose, signaling that their clandestine meeting was concluding. "One last thing, Captain. When you find my daughter," her voice wavered slightly, then steadied, "tell her that the fountain still flows backward, and her mother still waits." "I will," Reeve promised. As he prepared to leave, Soren stepped forward. "Captain," the commander said quietly, "I have served the Queen for 30 years. I have watched Princess Zara grow from an infant to the remarkable young woman she is today." His gaze was intense. "Bring her home. Whatever it takes. Reeve nodded once. Whatever it takes, he echoed. The shuttle. Peregrine slipped away from the Aurora during the second watch, its departure masked by a routine sensor diagnostic that created a 5-minute blind spot in the frigate's monitoring systems. Lieutenant Kai guided the craft into a low orbit around Valeris's third moon, using its magnetic field to shield them from observation until they could make the jump to Tarsus. In the passenger compartment, the rest of the team made final preparations. Leon checked and rechecked their equipment, weapons calibrated to stun rather than kill, scanning devices, breaching tools, and communications gear. Tariq studied the most recent intelligence on Tarsus's factions and power structures, while Noru organized his medical supplies. Reeve sat apart, turning the Queen's crystal over in his hands. Such a small thing to contain so much hope. He inserted it into their communications array, and immediately the fragmentary message they had intercepted expanded, revealing its full content. Mother, I'm alive, being held in the mining sector. Please come carefully. They watch constantly. They want something from you. Don't trust. The message cut off abruptly. Reeve played it again, focusing on the voice. Young, frightened, but determined. Princess Zara was not just alive. She was fighting. Captain, called Kai from the cockpit. Jump calculations complete. We're ready when you are. Reeve joined her, strapping into the co-pilot seat. Let's go get her, he said simply. Kai grinned, her hands dancing across the controls. Yes, sir. The Peregrine accelerated away from Valeris's moon, its engines flaring briefly before it vanished into the folded space of a controlled jump. Tarsus loomed before them less than an hour later, a scarred, pock-marked satellite orbiting a gas giant, once a prosperous mining colony. It had been abandoned when the ore veins ran dry, only to be repopulated by those seeking a haven beyond the reach of planetary authorities. Now, it was a hive of criminal enterprises, its surface dotted with makeshift settlements, and its depths riddled with the repurposed mining tunnels that made it such a perfect hiding place. Activating the phase shifter, Leon announced as they approached. The Sorali device hummed to life, bending energy around their shuttle in a way that made it register as little more than background radiation on standard sensors. Taking us in low and quiet, Kai murmured, guiding the craft into Tarsus's thin atmosphere. She navigated through swirling toxic clouds, using them as additional cover as they descended toward the southern hemisphere. I'm picking up multiple armed outposts, Tariq reported from the sensor station. Looks like the southern quadrant is contested territory. At least 3 different factions operating there. Any sign of our signal? Reeve asked. Tariq shook his head. No further transmissions. But I've narrowed the origin point to this region. He highlighted an area on their tactical display, a cluster of abandoned mining facilities surrounding what had once been the colony's primary processing center. Those structures are partially collapsed, Leon observed, studying the scans. Multiple tunnel systems intersecting beneath them. It's a maze down there. Then we'll need to find a guide, Reeve decided. Noru, you're up? The medical officer nodded, understanding the plan they had discussed earlier. In lawless communities like Tarsus, medical expertise was often in short supply and high demand, making a doctor one of the few outsiders who might move freely without raising immediate suspicion. I'll make contact at this outpost, Noru said, indicating a settlement near their landing zone. Based on the intelligence we have, there's a neutral trading post there where various factions interact. I should be able to gather information about the princess's possible location, or at least about who might be holding her. Remember, we're looking for subtlety here, Reeve cautioned. We're not an assault team, and we don't have backup. Our advantage is that no one is expecting us. 30 seconds to landing, Kai announced, her voice tight with concentration as she guided the shuttle toward a narrow plateau hidden from the main settlements by a ridge of slag heaps. The landing was perfect, a gentle touchdown that raised minimal dust and produced almost no sound. As the engines cycled down, the team performed one final equipment check. They would split up, Noru to gather intelligence at the trading post, Tariq to establish a listening post that might intercept any further communications from the princess, while Reeve and Leon secured the shuttle and prepared for potential rapid extraction. "Comms check every 15 minutes, Reeve ordered as they prepared to disembark. "If you miss 2 checks in a row, we come looking. If you run into trouble, use the emergency channel. But remember, it'll broadcast your position to everyone in range." They all nodded, faces serious but determined. "One last thing," Reeve said as the shuttle's ramp lowered, revealing Tarsus's barren landscape. "Whatever happens, we all go home. The princess, and all of us. That's an order." "Understood, Captain," they replied in unison. But as they stepped onto the toxic soil of the outlaw moon, each of them knew that some orders, no matter how well-intentioned, might prove impossible to follow. The trading post was a chaotic assemblage of salvaged ship parts, mining equipment, and prefabricated shelters, all connected by makeshift corridors that seemed to defy structural logic. Lieutenant Commander Noru moved through it cautiously, playing the role of an independent medical contractor seeking work, a common enough figure in places like Tarsus, where injuries were frequent and formal healthcare non-existent. His medical bag contained legitimate supplies, but also scanning equipment disguised as diagnostic tools. As he navigated the crowded pathways, he activated these discreetly, searching for any Sorali biosignatures that might indicate the princess's presence. "You're new," observed a gravelly voice. Noru turned to find a hulking figure watching him from the shadows of a recessed doorway. The being was Krevlax, a species known for their regenerative abilities and their tendency toward mercenary work. "Doctors don't usually come here unless they're running from something." "Or toward something," Noru countered smoothly. "Credits flow where blood flows, friend, and I hear Tarsus has plenty of both." The Krevlax grunted, then gestured for Noru to follow. "Could use someone with steady hands. Got a man with shrapnel in places it shouldn't be." "Opportunity." Noru nodded and followed, maintaining the casual confidence of someone who had treated worse injuries in worse places. The Krevlax led him through a series of increasingly narrow passages until they reached a small chamber that had been converted into a crude medical bay. On a table lay a being that Noru recognized immediately as Sorali, not the princess, but one of her people. A guard, based on the remnants of a uniform still visible beneath the blood-stained bandages. The Sorali's silver-tinted skin was ashen, his breathing labored. "Caught in a tunnel collapse," the Krevlax explained. "Been digging shrapnel out of him for days. But there's a piece near his spine we can't reach." Noru approached, medical training taking over as he assessed the injured guard. "I'll need better light, and clean water, if such a thing exists here." As the Krevlax moved to gather supplies, Noru leaned closer to the injured Sorali. "I'm going to help you," he said softly. "But I need information too. I'm looking for Princess Zara." The guard's eyes flew open, luminous with fear and hope. "You... Terran?" he rasped. "Yes, part of a rescue team. Where is she?" The guard's hand shot out, gripping Noru's wrist with surprising strength. "Lower levels, central processing. The rebel leader Drav uses her as bait for ransom." He coughed, wincing. "I was part of her escort when we were ambushed. The others were killed. I should have died protecting her." "You can still help protect her," Noru said, quickly preparing a pain-relieving injection as he heard the Krevlax returning. "Is she alive? Unharmed?" "Alive. Mistreated, but strong." The guard's eyes burned with intensity. "They keep her in the old control room. Security drones in the outer tunnels. Sonic mines in the approach corridors. The access codes changed daily. The Krevlaks returned with supplies, and Noru shifted seamlessly into doctor mode, treating the guard's injuries with genuine care, while continuing to extract information through seemingly casual conversation. By the time he had removed the dangerous shrapnel fragment and stabilized the guard's condition, he had compiled a mental map of the facility where Zara was being held, including guard rotations and potential entry points. "You've earned your pay," the Krevlak said, handing over a small pouch of credit chips as Noru packed up his supplies. "He needs rest and antibiotics," Noru replied, deliberately leaving a portion of his medical supplies. "I've left enough for 3 days' treatment." As he turned to leave, the guard caught his sleeve. "The princess," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Tell her Sentinel Marrow still stands his watch." Noru nodded once, understanding the message for what it was, a soldier's attempt at redemption. "I will," he promised. While Noru gathered intelligence at the trading post, Tariq established a listening post on a ridge overlooking the abandoned processing center. Using equipment designed to blend with the natural rock formations, he set up a communications array that could intercept and decode transmissions within a 5-kilometer radius. "I'm online," he reported via their secure channel. "No activity on the Princess's frequency, but I'm picking up significant comm traffic around the facility. Multiple guard shifts, supply deliveries, and something about a negotiation deadline set for tomorrow." In the shuttle, Reeve and Leon exchanged glances. A deadline meant pressure, both a complication and potentially an opportunity. "Can you get specifics on this negotiation?" Reeve asked. "Working on it," Tariq replied. "Most of it's encoded bursts, but wait." There was a pause. "Captain, I think they're preparing to move her. I'm picking up orders for a transport to be ready at 0600 tomorrow." The timeline had just accelerated dramatically. If the rebels were planning to relocate the princess, the team's window for rescue was closing fast. "Noru, what's your status?" Reeve asked, switching channels. "Heading back to the rendezvous point," came the reply. "I have the layout of the facility and confirmation that Princess Zara is being held in the central control room, heavily guarded with automated security systems throughout the approach tunnels." "Any weaknesses in their setup?" "Yes. The power grid is unstable. They've been having outages in the lower levels. And I've made contact with a Sarali guard who was part of the princess's original escort. He's provided access codes for the secondary maintenance tunnels." "Can he be trusted?" Leon asked, the engineer's natural skepticism evident in her tone. "I believe so," Noru replied after a moment's consideration. "He's being held here against his will, injured during the initial ambush. There's significant guilt driving him. He sees this as his chance for redemption." Reeve considered this information. "Rendezvous at the shuttle in 20 minutes. We need to move tonight, before they relocate her." As the team regrouped at the Peregrine, Reeve laid out the plan. Using the intelligence gathered by Noru and the monitoring capabilities established by Tariq, they would infiltrate the processing center through the maintenance tunnels, avoiding the main security checkpoints. Leon would temporarily disable the power grid, creating a diversion and disrupting the automated security systems. While the rebels dealt with the outage, the team would move to the central control room, extract the princess, and retreat the way they had come. "Time is critical," Reeve emphasized as they prepared their gear. Based on the communication Tariq intercepted, the rebels are planning to move Princess Zara at dawn, possibly to a more secure location, or to hand her over to another faction. Either way, this is our only chance. The 4 officers checked their weapons, set to stun rather than kill, to minimize the risk of a diplomatic incident, and donned lightweight tactical gear designed for stealth operations. Each carried a specialized kit based on their role. Leon with technical equipment for bypassing security systems, Noru with medical supplies for the princess, Tariq with communication devices to monitor rebel movements, and Reeve with the tactical gear needed to lead the extraction. "Remember," Reeve said as they prepared to move out, "our primary objective is the princess's safety. We avoid engagement where possible, use minimum force when necessary, and maintain communication at all times." Night had fallen over Tarsus by the time they left the shuttle. Its barren landscape transformed into a terrain of deep shadows and treacherous footing. They moved in single file, following a route plotted to avoid the known patrol patterns of rebel guards. The abandoned processing center loomed ahead, its skeletal structure silhouetted against Tarsus's larger planetary neighbor. The entrance to the maintenance tunnels was exactly where the injured Sarali guard had indicated, a narrow service hatch partially concealed by years of accumulated debris. Leon made quick work of the old locking mechanism, and they slipped inside, activating low-light visors to navigate the pitch-black passageway. "Sentries ahead," Tariq whispered, monitoring the heat signatures on his scanner. "Two of them, at the junction." Reeve signaled for the team to hold position while he edged forward to assess the situation. The sentries were positioned at a critical intersection, blocking their path to the lower levels where the princess was being held. Taking them out quietly would be possible, but risky. If either managed to sound an alarm, the entire rescue operation would be compromised. He rejoined the team, outlining the situation in hushed tones. "We need a diversion," he concluded. Leon studied the schematics they had obtained. "There's a secondary power coupling about 20 meters back. If I overload it, it should create a localized system failure, enough to draw their attention without triggering facility-wide alerts." "Do it," Reeve decided. "We'll move the moment they leave their post." While Leon backtracked to sabotage the power coupling, the rest of the team prepared to advance. Minutes later, a series of sharp electrical pops echoed through the tunnel, followed by the flickering and failure of lights in the section behind them. As predicted, the sentries abandoned their post to investigate, allowing the team to slip past the junction and continue deeper into the facility. The maintenance tunnels grew narrower and more claustrophobic as they descended, the air thick with dust and the metallic tang of corroded machinery. Twice they were forced to halt as patrol groups passed nearby, and once they had to detour around a section of collapsed tunnel that had not appeared on their schematics. "We're approaching the central processing level," Tariq reported, after nearly an hour of careful progress. The princess's last transmission originated approximately 50 meters ahead. "Security systems?" Reeve asked. Tariq consulted his scanner. "Active, but degraded. I'm detecting motion sensors and what appear to be sonic mines in the approach corridor." Leanne moved forward, examining the security setup with a professional eye. "The motion sensors are old mining equipment repurposed for security. They're calibrated for larger movements. If we move slowly enough, we should be able to slip past them." "And the mines?" "Trickier. They're pressure-activated, embedded in the floor plates." She pointed to almost imperceptible discolorations in the metal flooring ahead. "We'll need to step exactly where I step, and maintain even weight distribution." Their progress slowed to an agonizing crawl as Leon guided them through the minefield, identifying safe pathways with her scanner and testing each step before committing her weight. One by one, they navigated the deadly obstacle, their concentration absolute. Finally, they reached a heavy blast door, the entrance to what had once been the facility's central control room. "This is it," Noru confirmed, checking the layout provided by the injured guard. "Princess Zara should be on the other side." Leon examined the door's security system. "Encrypted lock, but it's using an outdated algorithm. Give me 2 minutes." As she worked on bypassing the lock, Reeve checked in with Tariq. "What's the situation inside?" Tariq frowned at his scanner. "Reading 3 heat signatures. 2 appear to be guards, positioned near the entrance. The third is smaller, seated in the center of the room, presumably the princess." "Armed?" "The guards, yes. Carrying energy weapons of some kind. The princess? Uncertain." Leon looked up from the lock. "I've bypassed the primary security, but there's a secondary system that will trigger an alarm if we force entry. We need the daily access code." Reeve thought quickly. The injured guard had provided yesterday's code, but mentioned they changed daily. Then, he remembered the Crystal Queen airline had given him, the decryption key for Zara's personal communications. "Tariq," he said, "can you use the Queen's crystal to access the facility's communication system? If the codes are changed daily, they must be distributed somehow." Tariq's eyes widened in understanding. He quickly connected the crystal to his communications device, using it to penetrate the facility's internal network. "Found it," he reported, after tense seconds of searching. "Today's access code is Nebula 6 Echo 9. Leon entered the code, and the blast door's locking mechanism disengaged with a soft click. Before opening it, Reeve gathered the team for one final briefing. "We go in fast and quiet. Tariq and I will neutralize the guards. Leon, secure the exit. Noru, assess the princess's condition immediately." He paused. "If anything goes wrong, the priority is getting Princess Zara out safely. Understood?" They nodded, weapons ready, expressions resolute. "On my mark," Reeve said, positioning himself at the door. 3, 2, 1, mark." The door slid open, and they moved into the control room with practiced efficiency. The guards, caught by surprise, barely had time to reach for their weapons before Reeve and Tariq's stun blasts rendered them unconscious. Leon secured the door behind them, while Noru rushed toward the central figure in the room. Princess Zara was thinner than in her portraits, her silver gold hair dulled by captivity, her royal garments replaced by simple gray clothing. But her violet eyes, so like her mother's, burned with the same intelligence and determination Reeve had seen in the garden portrait. She was bound to a chair, restraints at her wrists and ankles, but her posture remained regal despite her circumstances. "Princess Zara," Reeve said, approaching as Noru began checking her vital signs and removing the restraints. "I'm Captain John Reeve of the Terran frigate Aurora. We're here to take you home." Her eyes widened slightly. "Terran," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse or mistreatment. "My mother sent you." "Yes," Reeve confirmed, kneeling beside her as Noru continued his medical assessment. "She asked me to tell you that the fountain still flows backward, and she still waits." Tears filled Zara's eyes at this message, but she blinked them away quickly, focus returning. "We must hurry," she said urgently. "Drav will return soon with the negotiators. He plans to auction me to the highest bidder among rival factions." "Can you walk?" Noru asked, finishing his examination. "Yes. They've kept me weakened but intact. My value diminishes if I'm damaged." There was a bitter edge to her voice, but no self-pity. "Captain," Tariq called from the door, his tone tense. "We have movement in the outer corridor. Multiple signatures approaching." Reeve helped Zara to her feet, supporting her as she swayed slightly. "Is there another way out?" he asked her. She nodded. "Emergency evacuation tunnel. For radiation leaks in the mining days." She pointed to a maintenance panel on the far wall. "Behind that access point. But it's code-locked as well." "Leon," Reeve called, and the engineer was already moving toward the panel. "More complications, Captain," she reported after examining it. "This uses a different security protocol, older, hardwired. I can't bypass it electronically." Zara stepped forward, steadier now. "I know the override sequence," she said. "It's an old mining safety protocol. I studied it before." She didn't finish the sentence, but moved to the panel and entered a complex sequence of commands. The panel slid aside, revealing a narrow passage. "They're at the outer security checkpoint," Tariq warned. 2 minutes, maybe less." "Move," Reeve ordered, ushering the princess into the evacuation tunnel. The team followed quickly, with Reeve taking up the rear position. As Leon attempted to reseal the panel behind them, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the facility, piercing, unmistakable. "They've discovered the unconscious guards," Tariq said grimly. The tunnel was tight, forcing them to move in single file through near darkness. Zara led the way, her memory of the evacuation route proving accurate as she guided them through junctions and around obstacles. Despite her weakened state, she maintained a steady pace, determination evident in every movement. "Where does this exit?" Reeve asked, as they hurried through the passage. "Auxiliary landing pad," Zara replied over her shoulder. "It was used for emergency medical evacuations during the mining operation." This was both promising and concerning. A landing pad would provide a direct extraction point, but would also likely be guarded or monitored. The sound of pursuit echoed behind them, shouts and the clatter of boots on metal grating. Their head start was significant, but their pursuers knew the facility better and weren't burdened with a weakened prisoner. As they approached the tunnel's end, Zara suddenly halted. "Wait," she whispered. "The exit is alarmed. If we open it without deactivating the security system, we'll be surrounded in minutes." Leon pushed forward to examine the exit mechanism. "I can disable it, but I'll need time." "Which we don't have," Reeve said. Hearing the pursuit growing closer, he made a quick decision. "Noru, stay with the princess and Leon. Tariq, with me. We'll create a diversion, buy you the time you need." "Captain," Zara began to object, but Reeve cut her off. "Your safety is our mission, Princess. We'll rejoin you at the exit point." Before further objections could be raised, Reeve and Tariq doubled back, moving to an intersection in the tunnel system where they could set an ambush for their pursuers. Using debris and equipment scavenged from the tunnel, they created a choke point that would force the rebels to slow their advance. "Ready?" Reeve asked, positioning himself behind a fallen support beam. Tariq nodded, weapon charged and aimed at the approaching heat signatures. "Ready, sir." The first rebels rounded the corner at a run, only to find their path partially blocked by the makeshift barricade. As they hesitated, Reeve and Tariq opened fire with precisely aimed stun blasts, dropping 3 pursuers before the others could retreat for cover. An exchange of fire followed, the rebels using lethal settings on their weapons, forcing Reeve and Tariq to keep low as energy bolts scorched the tunnel walls around them. They returned fire selectively, conserving power in their weapons while maintaining enough pressure to keep the pursuers pinned down. "Leon, status?" Reeve asked via their comlink. "Almost there," came the tense reply. 30 more seconds." "Make it 15, Reeve responded as a blast narrowly missed his head. "Our friends are getting ambitious." The standoff continued, with Reeve and Tariq gradually giving ground to maintain the illusion that they were the entire rescue team, drawing attention away from the exit point where Leon worked frantically on the security system. "Got it!" Leon's triumphant voice came through the comm. "Exit is clear. Repeat, exit is clear." "Fall back to the extraction point," Reeve ordered Tariq. "Covering fire, then run. Don't stop for anything." They executed the maneuver with military precision, Tariq laying down suppressive fire, while Reeve retreated. Then, reversing roles to leapfrog down the tunnel toward the exit. The pursuing rebels, emboldened by what they perceived as a retreat, pressed forward more aggressively, only to be met with calculated resistance that slowed but couldn't stop their advance. By the time Reeve and Tariq reached the exit, Leon had the hatch open and was helping Princess Zara through. Noru followed, then Leon herself, with Tariq close behind. Reeve paused at the threshold, firing one last volley to discourage immediate pursuit, then slipped through, sealing the hatch behind him. They emerged onto a small landing pad, elevated above the main facility complex. The toxic atmosphere of Tarsus swirled around them, visibility limited by swirling dust and chemical haze. No shuttle waited. This wasn't their planned extraction point, but the elevated position provided a momentary advantage against pursuit. "Kai," Reeve called into his comm, Emergency extraction. Sending coordinates now. On my way, came the pilot's immediate response. ETA 3 minutes. We may not have 3 minutes, Leon observed grimly, pointing to movement on the levels below them. Rebel forces were mobilizing, converging on the auxiliary pad from multiple directions. Defensive positions, Reeve ordered. Princess, stay with Noru in the center. The rest of you, find cover and conserve power in your weapons. We only need to hold until Kai arrives. They spread out along the perimeter of the landing pad, using cargo containers and maintenance equipment as makeshift barricades. The first rebels to reach the pad's access points were met with precise stun blasts that dropped them where they stood. But more kept coming, a wave of hostility closing in from all sides. Captain, Tariq called from his position. We have a problem. They're bringing up heavy weapons. Reeve saw it too, a mounted energy cannon being wheeled into position on a nearby gantry. If it became operational, their makeshift defenses would be useless. Leon, can you disable it? He asked. The engineer studied the cannon through her tactical visor. Not from here, but... She pointed to a control panel near Tariq's position. That's an atmospheric regulator for the landing pad. If we overload it... Do it, Reeve ordered without hesitation. Tariq and Leon worked together, the linguist providing covering fire, while the engineer rerouted power conduits in the control panel. Seconds later, the regulator exploded in a shower of sparks, releasing a dense cloud of chemical fog that enveloped the landing pad and surrounding gantries. Visibility dropped to near zero, temporarily blinding both the rescue team and their attackers. Everyone, activate infrared, Reeve commanded. With their visors switched to thermal imaging, they could navigate the fog while their pursuers were left firing blindly into the chemical cloud. The sound of engines cut through the chaos, the Peregrine approaching through Tarsus's toxic atmosphere, guided by the team's transponder signals. Kai brought the shuttle in with remarkable precision, hovering just above the landing pad despite the near-zero visibility. "Boarding now!" Reeve shouted over the roar of the engines. "Princess first!" Noru guided Zara to the shuttle's extended ramp, helping her aboard as Leon and Tariq provided covering fire against the increasingly desperate but ineffective attacks from the blinded rebels. Reeve held the perimeter alone as his team members boarded one by one, finally backing up the ramp himself as the shuttle began to lift away from the pad. Energy blasts from the rebels' weapons lanced through the chemical fog, scoring hits against the shuttle's hull, but failing to penetrate its military-grade shielding. As the Peregrine gained altitude, accelerating away from the facility, the rebels' fire became more sporadic, then ceased altogether as they disappeared into the toxic haze of Tarsus's atmosphere. Inside the shuttle, Princess Zara collapsed into a seat, exhaustion finally overtaking the adrenaline that had sustained her through the escape. Noru immediately moved to her side, administering fluids and conducting a more thorough medical examination. The rest of the team secured equipment and checked for damage, the practiced efficiency of their movements belying the tension that still gripped them. "Course plotted for Valaris," Kai reported from the cockpit. "ETA 4 hours. Reeve nodded, then moved to kneel beside Zara. "Princess, are you all right?" She looked up at him, fatigue evident in her violet eyes, but also a profound relief. "Yes, Captain," she said softly. "Thanks to you and your team. I had almost given up hope." "Your transmission led us to you," Reeve told her. "Your courage and resourcefulness made this rescue possible." A small smile touched her lips. "I remembered my lessons. Technical studies have practical applications. It seems..." The smile faded, replaced by concern. "My mother, how is she?" "Waiting for you," Reeve replied simply. "She never lost faith that you would return." Tears welled in Zara's eyes, but she blinked them away with regal composure. "Thank you," she whispered, "for risking everything to bring me home." As the peregrine accelerated toward Valeris, leaving the outlaw moon behind, Reeve thought of another daughter, another home. For Emma, there had been no rescue, no return. But today, at least, one family would be made whole again. It was enough. It had to be. Queen Aeroline stood in the private royal hangar, her usual entourage reduced to just High Commander Soren and a small honor guard. No media, no court officials. This reunion would not be a spectacle. The Queen had insisted on that much, even as word spread through the palace that the princess might be returning. The wait was excruciating. Soren had confirmed that an unidentified shuttle had requested emergency clearance to land at the royal facility, using codes that corresponded to Captain Reeve's signature. But until the craft actually appeared, doubt and fear continued their relentless assault on Aeroline's hope. "Your Majesty," Soren said softly, "the shuttle has entered Valeris airspace. Landing protocol initiated." Aeroline nodded, unable to trust her voice. She stood straighter, hands clasped before her to hide their trembling. The royal crown sat heavy on her brow, but she had insisted on wearing it, not for ceremony, but as a reminder to herself. Whatever happened next, she would face it as both a mother and a queen. The hangar doors parted, admitting a streamlined shuttle that bore the unmistakable scars of weapons fire across its hull. It settled onto the landing pad with a grace that belied its battle-damaged appearance. Engines cycling down as the boarding ramp extended. Aeroline held her breath. Long seconds passed. Then, a figure appeared at the top of the ramp. Slender, silver-gold hair dulled by captivity, but unmistakable. Princess Zara paused, her gaze finding her mother's across the hangar. For a heartbeat, neither moved. "Mom," Zara whispered, the word carrying in the silence of the hangar. Something broke in Aeroline. The regal composure, the diplomatic restraint, all of it swept away by the tide of maternal love. She ran forward as Zara descended the ramp, meeting her daughter halfway and enfolding her in an embrace so fierce it seemed to defy separation itself. "Mom, I'm back," Zara sobbed into her mother's shoulder, the formal princess vanishing into the arms of the one person who had never stopped believing in her return. "He saved me. They saved me." Aeroline cradled her daughter's face between her hands, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. "My little one," she whispered. "My brave, brilliant girl." Behind them, Captain Reeve and his team disembarked from the shuttle, standing at a respectful distance from the reunion. Soren approached them, offering a bow that spoke volumes about his gratitude. "The crown of Valeris is in your debt," he said formally. "What you have accomplished today will not be forgotten." Reeve nodded in acknowledgement, but his attention remained on the reunited mother and daughter. There was something both beautiful and painful in witnessing their joy, a reminder of what he had lost. Yes, but also an affirmation of why that loss mattered. Why all of it mattered. Eventually, Queen Aeroline composed herself enough to approach the Terran officers. With one arm still wrapped protectively around her daughter, she addressed them with eyes still bright with tears. "Captain Reeve," she said, her voice steady, despite the emotion evident in her face. "There are no words adequate to express what you and your team have done for my family and for Valeris. Ask anything within my power to grant, and it shall be yours." Reeve exchanged glances with his team before answering. "Your Majesty, we ask only that you remember this moment the next time tensions rise between our peoples. Remember that when it mattered most, we chose cooperation over conflict, compassion over suspicion." Aeroline studied him, understanding the deeper request behind his words. "I will remember, Captain, and more importantly, I will ensure that others remember as well." She turned to address the honor guard and the few witnesses present. "Let it be known throughout Valeris that from this day forward, the Terran Alliance shall be counted not merely as allies, but as friends of the Crown. The peace between our worlds shall be strengthened, not by treaties alone, but by the bonds of shared courage and compassion. As the royal party prepared to depart, Princess Zara broke away briefly to approach Reeve. "Captain," she said, her voice stronger now, more like the confident scholar from her portraits. "My mother tells me you have a daughter." Reeve hesitated, the familiar ache rising in his chest. "Had," he corrected gently. "She was lost to us 5 years ago." Understanding dawned in Zara's eyes. "That's why you came for me," she said softly. "Not just duty or diplomacy." "Every child deserves to go home," Reeve said simply. Zara nodded, then reached up to remove a small crystal pendant from around her neck. A simple thing, nothing like the elaborate royal jewels, but clearly of personal significance. She pressed it into Reeve's hand. "On my world, we believe that those we lose never truly leave us," she said. "Their energy returns to the stars, watching over us. This crystal is aligned to Valeris's northernmost constellation, what you might call your North Star. When you look up at your night sky, she's there, Captain, guiding you home, just as you guided me." Before Reeve could respond, she embraced him briefly, then returned to her mother's side. The royal party departed, leaving the Terran officers alone in the hangar, their mission complete but its impact only beginning to unfold. "Captain," Leon said after a moment, breaking the contemplative silence, "the Aurora will be expecting us soon, and I imagine there will be questions about our unauthorized excursion." Reeve nodded, pocketing the crystal pendant. Whatever repercussions awaited them aboard the Aurora, they would face them together, just as they had faced the dangers of Tarsus. "Let's go home," he said simply, as their shuttle lifted off from Valeris, returning to the orbiting frigate that represented their duty and their purpose. Reeve found himself thinking not of regulations violated or explanations owed, but of a fountain that defied gravity, a lullaby that bridged worlds, and the daughter who had once shown him stars from their backyard on Earth, her small hand in his, her wonder making the universe new again. Some missions transcended duty, some bonds transcended worlds, and sometimes, in rescuing others, we found pieces of ourselves we thought were lost forever. 1 year later, the crystal spires of Valeris gleamed in the light of twin suns as crowds gathered in the Grand Plaza. Banners of silver and blue, the colors of both Sarali royalty and Terran naval dress uniforms, fluttered in the gentle breeze. At the plaza's center stood a simple monument, a fountain whose waters flowed in seeming defiance of gravity, surrounded by inscriptions in both Sarali and Terran languages. Princess Zara, fully recovered from her ordeal, and resplendent in formal attire that combined traditional Sarali elegance with subtle Terran design elements, addressed the assembled dignitaries and citizens. "Today we inaugurate not just a monument, but a tradition," she declared, her voice carrying across the hushed plaza. "The day of the lullaby, to commemorate not only my return, but the courage and compassion that made it possible. From this day forward, let it stand as a reminder that the bonds between individuals can transcend the boundaries between worlds." In the front row, Captain John Reeve stood at attention in his dress uniform, the crystal pendant visible against the dark fabric. Beside him were Lieutenants Kai and Tariq, and Lieutenant Commanders Leon and Noru, all officially commended now for what had once been an unauthorized mission. Behind them, a group of young scholars, half Sarali, half Terran, waited with barely contained excitement. They were the first participants in the exchange program that Princess Zara had proposed before her abduction, now finally being implemented under her direct supervision. Queen Ereline stepped forward, joining her daughter at the monument. "It is said that in the darkest times, we discover our truest lights," she addressed the crowd. "The light I rediscovered was the power of trust, not just between a mother and daughter, but between peoples who once viewed each other with suspicion. She gestured to Reeve and his team. These officers risked everything, not for political advantage or personal gain, but because they recognized a universal truth, that compassion knows no boundaries of species or world, that the desire to protect those we love is written in all our hearts, whatever form those hearts may take. At a signal from the Queen, the fountain's flow changed, the water reshaping itself into a spiraling pattern that seemed to connect earth and sky in an infinite loop. As it did, a soft melody began to play, the Sorali lullaby that Reeve had sung in the underground vault, now arranged for instruments from both worlds. The crowd fell silent, moved by the simple beauty of the melody and all it represented. Parents drew children closer, veterans stood a little straighter, the young scholars exchanged glances of determination and hope. When the music faded, Princess Zara approached Captain Reeve, extending her hand in the formal Terran military greeting, rather than the traditional Sorali bow. "Captain," she said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "When you found me in that cell, I whispered, 'Mom, I'm back.' In that moment of desperation and hope, I wasn't a princess. I was simply a daughter longing for home." She looked out at the crowd, making sure her next words reached all. That is what we share, across all our differences, the yearning for connection, for belonging, for home, and in recognizing that shared yearning, we find our true strength. Reeve clasped her hand firmly, diplomat and rescuer, officer and friend. "Princess Zara," he replied, "the honor was, and remains, entirely ours." As the ceremony concluded, and the crowds began to disperse, Reeve found himself alone by the fountain, watching its impossible flow. He touched the crystal pendant at his throat, thinking of distant stars and daughters lost and found. "She would have liked you," came a voice behind him. Queen Aeroline approached, her formal regalia set aside for simpler attire. "Your daughter," she clarified at his questioning look. "Zara tells me she was curious, like my daughter, that she loved the stars." Reeve nodded, finding it easier to speak of Emma now than it had been a year ago. "She wanted to be an explorer, to see what was beyond our solar system." "In a way," Aeroline said gently, "she sent you in her place, and in doing so, built a bridge between worlds." She reached out, lightly touching the crystal pendant. "Zara told you our belief, that those we lose return to the stars. What she may not have mentioned is the rest of that belief, that sometimes they send us messages through the actions of others, guiding us toward healing, toward hope." Before Reeve could respond, a young Terran girl from the exchange program approached, her eyes wide with wonder at finding herself in conversation with the Sorali Queen. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly, "but is it true that the fountain really defies gravity? Our physics teacher says it's an illusion, but—" Aeroline smiled. "Why don't we find out?" she suggested, gesturing for the girl to follow her to the fountain's edge. Science, after all, begins with questions. As Reeve watched them go, the queen of an alien world patiently explaining physics to a human child, he felt something settle in his heart. Not closure, exactly. Emma would always be a missing piece of him, but perhaps something equally valuable: perspective. He looked up at the Valaris sky, where the first stars were becoming visible despite the daylight. Somewhere among them was Earth's sun. Somewhere among them was the star Zara had aligned her crystal to, the one she believed watched over him now. "Guide us well," he whispered to those distant lights. Then, straightening his uniform, he went to join his team and the young scholars who represented the future they had all risked so much to secure. A future where lullabies bridged the space between worlds, and even the greatest losses could, in time, give birth to newfound hope.